Morning, guys. Welcome back to Mornings with Granny. Hope you had a good weekend. I had a busy weekend. I took Mom out Saturday morning just to get her out of the house a little bit. We went looking and shopping at some of the stores, and we went to Taco Bell thanks to one of you guys. You sent a card, and I took her to Taco Bell for lunch. And then Sunday was church. So it's been a busy weekend. First of all, I want to say Happy Veterans Day and thank you for the ones that have served and are serving. My children, two of my children served. My daughter was in the Air Force, my son was in the Army and the Air Force, and my ex-husband was in the Navy and the National Guard. So, thank you. Thank you so much. All right. I thought we would do a game today. Do you remember? Let's see how old of an audience I have. All right. When I went to school, which was about 1960, I think, when I was in the first grade, we didn't have that many students, so my class was split into two. You had first graders, which was me, in one part, second graders in the other part. So the teacher taught first graders the first half, second graders the second half. And you would sit and do your homework while the other class was being taught. But in that class, the way we learn to count is on an abacus. Now, how many of you know what an abacus is? It's also called a counting frame. But that's what I learned to count on. If you don't know what an abacus is, it's ABACUS. Look it up. Another thing is, how many of you remember the rotary phone, like the phone I have back here on the wall? Well, that one's push button, but the rotary had the dial on it. How many remember that? And the party lines. Now, when I was a kid and I lived with my grandmother, we had a party line. There was 10 families on that line. So when you wanted to use the phone, you picked it up, and there might be somebody talking, so you had to wait till they got through. Or being the kid that I was, I would listen in on conversations, which I know was wrong. I know it, but I was a kid. Or you would get tired and you would ask somebody to please let you use the phone for a minute, because people would stay on there for hours, and me being a kid, I was just as guilty. I stayed on there too. I would get on there talking to my friends, and I would have to be asked to get off. My grandmother and grandfather ran a store, so the people would just go directly to them and complain about me being on the phone. But how many remember the rotary phone and the party line? Here's another one for you. How many remember the 2-track tape player? Now, I know you remember 8-track tapes, but do you remember the 2-track tape player? I got one year for Christmas. They only made them, I think, from 1966 to 1968. They were rectangle, about like a tape recorder, and they had little square tapes, about that big. They had 4 songs on them. And when the person bought this one for me, they bought me 2 tapes, but I can't remember what was on the other tape. But one of them was Maurice Chevalier, Thank Heavens for Little Girls. I remember that song because I played it over and over and over. I don't remember the other songs, but they were all from that screenplay. So that was a 2-track tape player. And a lot of people don't remember those. All right, how many of you remember the plastic screens for the TV? You know, we had the big box TVs, big cabinets, what I'm trying to say, big cabinet TVs that were black and white. I think color finally came out, I believe it started in 1951 or so, but for people who couldn't afford a color TV because they were high, we had plastic screens. And the plastic screen was made to fit the front of the TV, the glass part, or tube part, whatever you want to call it. And we put it on. The top part of it was blue for sky. The middle of it was kind of a reddish tint, and then the bottom was green for grass, which gave you a kind of picture, but you had a little bit of color. So how many remember the plastic screen that you put on the TV? Okay, we're going to go to another thing for TV. How many of you remember using antennas? I don't know how many times I got sent out, and also my kids, because you ran the wire into the house, you connected it to the TV, and you had a tall antenna on the outside. And every time you would change channels, which you had to get up and change them manually, you would send someone out to turn that antenna, and you would be hollering out the window, a little bit more to the right, a little bit more to the left, stop, wait, nope, that's it, nope, turn a little bit more, turn a little bit more. I've sent my kids out to do the same thing. We had a tall antenna too when I first got married and the kids were little. So how many of you remember going out and turning that antenna to get the reception in? All right. How many of you remember the milkman? Now, we lived in the country and we grew our own food, but I can still remember the milkman delivering bottles of milk. So how many of you remember the milkman? All right. How many of you remember this? How many of you remember, I think they were made out of aluminum, the metal ice trays? They were the metal, shaped like an ice tray, and they had a lever, however you want to say it. You pulled it up and to loosen the ice. And your hands would get stuck. I mean, you would get it out of the freezer and your hand would stick to it, and you'd have to go in there and run cold water over your hand to get it loose. You'd pop that ice and bang it trying to get the ice cubes loose. But how many of you remember those metal ice trays? I remember having them when we first got married. My uncle gave us it was a 1938 or 1939 refrigerator. I can't remember the name brand. It had the rounded top and it had the little freezer. It was just big enough. It had a shelf in it, just big enough to put 2 of those little ice trays in, or a little bit of meat, whatever. But that thing on low froze everything. You put the eggs in the bottom, they would freeze. You crack them and you have a solid egg. But that's the only refrigerator we could afford, so we used it because my uncle gave it to us, so we used it till we could do better. But how many remember that? So I want you to let me know in the comments below these things. If you remember, tell me about them. All right, before I go, I want to wish a happy birthday to my granddaughter, Autumn. She turned 18 on the 6th of this month. My granddaughter, Courtney, turns 16 on the 12th of this month. And my son will be 45 on the 16th of this month. And he just got a full-time pastorship at a church in another state. And he's been working as a youth minister or going around preaching at different churches. So he finally got his own church. He starts in January. So I'd like for you to pray to give him wisdom to lead his flock. All right, guys, that's it for today. I hope you have a great day. I will see you Friday. I hope you'll give us a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.